You're looking at probably the most recognized face in all of ancient history, right? King Tutankhamun. For 100 years, we thought we knew the story of the boy king, the forgotten pharaoh, this incredible accidental icon. But it turns out that solid gold mask was hiding a story that was way stranger and honestly way more important than anyone ever imagined. Okay, let's get into this. I mean, look at it. The face the world fell in love with is just serene, ageless perfection. But the actual human being underneath it, he was the product of a dynasty that had been for generations literally engineering its own extinction. The real story wasn't in the gold at all. It was in his biology. For decades, archaeology just couldn't give us the full picture. The artifacts raised all these questions they just couldn't solve. But then, modern science showed up. And for the very first time, we could actually read the record that wasn't written in stone, but was written in his very DNA. All right, so to really understand Tutankhamun, you first have to understand his family, the 18th dynasty. Now, this was not your typical royal lineage. They had a very specific, and I mean very deliberate policy for their bloodline, and that policy would turn out to be completely fatal. The Egyptians called it maintaining the divine bloodline. The whole idea was that the royal blood was way too sacred to be diluted with anyone else's. But you know what biology calls it? Inbreeding. With every single generation that married within the immediate family, we're talking brother to sister, father to daughter, the genetic weak spots just piled up. For years, nobody knew for sure who Tut's parents were. It was one of the biggest mysteries in Egyptology. Then this landmark study comes out in 2010. A team spent 2 years analyzing the DNA from 11 different royal mummies, and what they found completely rewrote the family tree. And the results were just staggering. The DNA proved his father was the famous pharaoh Akhenaten, okay? But his mother? She was the mummy known as the younger lady, who the DNA confirmed was Akhenaten's full sister. Not a half-sister, not a cousin, full siblings. So what does this actually mean genetically? Well, this number, the inbreeding coefficient, it basically measures the odds that you inherit 2 identical copies of a gene from a recent ancestor. If your parents are unrelated, that number is 0. For the kids of first cousins, it's about 0.06. Tutankhamun's number? Over a quarter. That is an absolutely astronomical figure, signaling a catastrophic level of genetic risk. His body was basically a walking ledger of his family's obsession. And yeah, the price of that purity was steep. This genetic crisis wasn't some abstract number. It was written into his skeleton from the moment he was born. The DNA evidence, combined with CT scans, gave us this brutally honest look at a life that was probably filled with pain. So from birth, Tutankhamun had a cleft palate and a curved spine. But that was just the start. He had a severe club foot on his left leg, and as you're about to see, that wasn't even the worst of his problems. This right here explains so much about his life. On top of everything else, Tut suffered from bone necrosis in his left foot. It's this devastating condition where the bone tissue literally dies because it's starved of blood. You can only imagine how excruciatingly painful any kind of movement would have been. And this single number just makes his struggle so real. For decades, archaeologists found this huge collection of walking sticks and just assumed they were ceremonial, symbols of power. But 130 of them? The medical evidence tells a totally different story. The new evidence is just undeniable. These canes were not for show. With a clubfoot and dying bone tissue, Tutankhamun physically needed them just to stand up and walk around. Think about that. Out of 5,000 objects in his tomb, 130 of them were medical aids. This discovery didn't just solve a mystery, it completely changed our image of the boy king. Tutankhamun's own personal fragility was really just a mirror of his entire dynasty's. The very policy that was designed to preserve this divine bloodline was now pushing it right to the edge of a complete collapse. His short life was basically the climax of this inherited crisis. So how did he die at just 19? Well, it wasn't murder, like people used to think. It was a perfect storm. He likely had a bad fall and fractured his leg. On top of that, his DNA showed he was battling severe recurring malaria. His body, which was already compromised from birth by all these genetic diseases, just had nothing left in the tank to fight with. And the dynasty story ends with this really heartbreaking final note. Its obsession with purity meant it literally couldn't produce a living heir anymore. Tutankhamun and his wife, who was also his half-sister, had 2 daughters. Both of them were stillborn, and both showed similar skeletal abnormalities. The bloodline that had ruled Egypt didn't fall to some enemy, it just ran out. After he died, his successor, a general named Horemheb, launched this campaign to just erase Tutankhamun from existence. I mean, he literally tried to rewrite history by chiseling Tut's name off of every monument. But here's the thing, you can't erase biology. And this is the central irony of the whole story. Horemheb's campaign to erase him almost worked. For 3,000 years, Tut was totally forgotten. But some freak accident sealed his tomb's entrance, hiding it from looters and, more importantly, from Horemheb's chisels. The attempt to erase his name is what accidentally preserved his body. So, in the end, Horemheb's plan failed. For 3,000 years, the biology just waited. And it turns out, biology is a much more durable record than stone. The very story Horemheb tried to end is the one that's now speaking the loudest. So the Boy King, completely forgotten by the ancient world, has ended up revealing a story that's far more profound than any inscription could. It really makes you wonder, right? As we keep unlocking the secrets of ancient DNA, how many other lost stories and vanished people are out there, their true histories waiting